months ago, that section of the Pentagon would have been virtually empty. But at this time of day, early morning or mid-morning, the Pentagon's very busy. It's impossible to say how many casualties there may be. But there have been a large number of people cited being removed on stretchers. And again, as one survivor said, the floor just buckled up under him and the roof caved in on him.
All right, Mick, thank you very much. We want to move a couple of miles away from you right now to the White House, where Bob Kerr is standing by. And Bob, we understand that building has now been evacuated?
Matt, that's true. It is utterly surreal. As soon as word came of the Pentagon incident, we were rather forcefully removed from the White House. The scene was one of administrators, cooks, whatever, running at fairly high speed all the way out of the building through the top gates. Then we huddled for a while in Lafayette Park across the street, and we've been moved now from there a block or so away. The offices along Jackson Place, which are across the street from the White House and adjacent to Lafayette Park, also have been evacuated. And in the most surreal of this morning's scenes here at the White House, a white plane, a very big jet, was flying in unusual pattern near the White House over Lafayette Park very slowly. It made one circle, and then we have not seen it since. There was a lot of concern about what that plane might be, but again, it's only speculation, but most people say that since flights have been cleared from U.S. airspace and it was a totally white plane, looked unusual to all of us, that it was a government plane of some kind.
We should point out that we're looking at pictures, Bob, as you speak, of the World Trade Center, because all of the camera crews have been evacuated from the White House as well. When do you expect President Bush to arrive there, Bob?
Well, Katie, he's coming back directly, and you figure it's about a 2-hour flight, so you can do the math. The reason I said that it was so surreal was that within just about 20 minutes ago, they were still conducting tours. You had hordes of tourists and others still in the White House on tour, lining up outside to get in. There seemed to be absolutely no unusual activity outside the White House until word came of the incident at the Pentagon. So it's been quite a dramatic shift here.
You know, in terms of responsibility, Tom and Matt and Bob, apparently a senior official from the Radical Democratic Front for the Liberation of Palestine denied on Tuesday the group had any connection to the plane crash. An anonymous caller had told television that it was behind the crash, but, quote, "I emphasize that the story released on television by an anonymous person is totally incorrect." Tassir Khaled, a senior official from the DFLP Politburo in the Palestinian territories, told Reuters. The DFLP is against hijacking planes and against endangering the lives of civilians who are not connected with the struggle of this region, he said.
There are going to be a lot of claims and counterclaims in the course of the next 24 hours or so. This is a task for investigators of extraordinary magnitude to try to determine who did this and how they got away with it. You think about an American Airlines flight that was on its way from Boston to Los Angeles, was hijacked in midair. They're now citing transmissions from the plane, so they have hard evidence of that, and then brought down here and made to fly into the Twin Trade Towers. Did one of the hijackers get control? Did they shoot the pilot? It boggles the mind beyond our ability to figure out what was going on.
You talk about transmissions. I was just curious, have you had any evidence of what was said during those
They're just saying they're citing transmission to know that the plane had been hijacked. That's all that they're saying about it at this point. We also ought to remind everyone, once again, this is an exceptional development. The FAA has banned all takeoffs at all airports across America. This country, in terms of air travel, has been immobilized. A good portion of the nation's capital, the most powerful center in the world, has been immobilized as well as a result of these terrorist
attacks. And that's
attacks.
A very haunting description that Bob Kerr just gave of that low-flying aircraft near the White House, and one can only wonder if that was something that ultimately ended up in the Pentagon.
We just saw a live picture of what seemed to be a portion of the building falling away from the World Trade Center. If we can re-rack that to about 20 seconds ago, you'll see something dramatic happening, and I don't know whether it's another explosion or a portion of the building falling away, but something major just happened at that building. Here we go to the tape.
We have the tape.
And watch what happens in the left-hand tower. I don't know if this is the correct tape. There, something there is about to happen, falling away right there.
Yeah, it looks like a big chunk of it has just peeled away.
One can only hope that the area has been evacuated, but of course you wonder about all the emergency vehicles and the people who might have been injured early in the morning.
Well, you remember when the bomb went off in the basement of it in 1993, how much damage was done throughout that building, how much chaos there was at that time. These are two coordinated airplane attacks on the building on the upper reaches of it. That will have an enormous structural effect. Those buildings, I think that it's fair to say, will probably have to be brought down. It's too early to speculate on that, but there's been that kind of damage.
Let's talk again. You were talking about
Here we have somebody actually
this is a
on the
reporter
scene.
here in New York from WNBC. You talk about the fact this plane was taken from Boston on the way to Los Angeles. The reports are that it was being diverted to JFK, and just for people who aren't familiar with the geography of this area, the southern tip of Manhattan would be very much near the flight, the landing pattern for JFK Airport. It could have been easy for a hijacker to pretend that he was taking that plane to JFK and veer off at the last minute.
Yeah, I heard one eyewitness say that over Washington Square, which is in the lower reaches of Manhattan, he saw a plane go over at about 1,000 feet, apparently the American Airlines flight, and then do what he described as a sharp right turn right toward the World Trade Center. He then lost sight of it.
And one eyewitness here in this AP report says he was getting off a PATH train to the World Trade Center and saw bodies falling out of the building. As he approached it, police told him to get out of the building immediately. He ran outside and watched people jump out of the first building, and then there was a second explosion.
This footage we're seeing right now shows that the damage is so severe. I mean, we had seen what seemed to be two fairly self-contained impact craters before, and now it appears something much more dramatic has happened to at least one of those towers.
These pictures are beyond belief.
We have a report that the second plane may have flown out of Newark, New Jersey. This is an official who was speaking on the condition of anonymity. Again, there is no confirmation of that. We just know that there were two planes that went in. The first one apparently was an American Airlines flight that was from Boston to Los Angeles. We're now seeing it from the harbor view of this continuing damage and destruction to the World Trade Center.
Incidentally, Tom, I just want to interrupt you for 2 seconds because apparently Jamie Gangel has some more information for us. Jamie?
Spoken again to U.S. officials with access to the highest intelligence, and they are now confirming that it does appear that at the Pentagon it was a plane. Again, they are saying they believe now a third plane was involved at the Pentagon.
And of course, this has been the nightmare, Katie, for national security officials for a long time. We talk about nuclear bombs and those kinds of exchanges or invasions, but everyone has been terribly worried about the suitcase-sized bomb of some kind or an airplane or an attack on our subways in the large cities. And this, obviously, no one had anticipated. 3 airplanes that were deliberately aimed at critical targets in America. We can only hope that it's over for today, but officials are taking no chances on all of that. They're evacuating all critical buildings because, as Mr. Johnson said earlier, this is an open society. James Kallstrom from the FBI also pointing out that almost anyone can come in here. They have access to so many instruments that can be used as instruments of attack and terrorism, and that certainly has been the case today.
Let's go to our State Department correspondent, Andrea Mitchell. Andrea, what can you tell us?
Well, this from the FBI. The State Department has been evacuated. There was a meeting going on in the Operations Center. Other top officials were in the Situation Room at the White House. Colin Powell is in Bogota, Colombia, on a 2-day trip. But this very interesting information, Katie, Matt, and Tom, from the FBI, they had been operating a massive exercise from their hostage rescue unit. All of their top teams, about 50 personnel, helicopters, equipment, were in Monterey, California for the last 2 days, scheduled to fly back today commercially. So all of those people are out of place. It's fair to say, according to sources that we've talked to here at NBC, that the FBI rescue operations and other FBI operations are really in chaos right now because they can't reach their officials in New York. All of their phone lines are down, and now you've got all of their special experts on this stuck in Monterey, California, trying to get a military flight back because there are no longer commercial flights. So they are seriously out of pocket, and there is a real breakdown of the FBI anti-terror coordination team, which is, of course, the principal team that would lead any effort and was so effective under Jim Kallstrom in New York City during the World Trade Center bombing and the TWA explosion, which, of course, turned out not to be terror.
Andrea, is the State Department taking this claim of responsibility from the Democratic Front for the Liberation of Palestine seriously? Are they giving any credence to that, or are they dismissing it, or how do they feel about who might have been responsible for this?
I think it is far too